Little Alex comes into your therapy space like a Tasmanian devil. He hasn't stopped moving since he stepped foot in the door, and he's touched everything in reach. In fact, half of your stuff is already on the floor. What's a therapist to do? Never fear, my friends. I am Carrie Clark, speech language pathologist, and in this episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast, I'm going to show you how to incorporate sensory and movement into your speech and language therapy sessions for better behavior and better participation. So welcome to the podcast. If you're new to me, welcome to you. I am actually live inside the hub right now as I record this. So I have a couple of people in here with me. Hello to Julie and Anissa. And you guys can pop into the chat and ask questions as we go along, so that'll be really fun. But I wanted to start with a few announcements, and then we will move into our subject today, which is all about sensory and behavior, sensory and movement ideas for behavior, which I think is so timely because I've actually had 2 different messages today inside the hub from people asking me about how to help these children who are having these behavior problems because they are not able to sit down and focus. Hey, Anissa. So I think this is a great topic to be covering today. So hopefully this is helpful to you. But before we get started, I did want to do a quick giveaway. Every once in a while on the podcast recordings, I do a giveaway for somebody who is with me live inside the hub. And if you would like to participate in our live recordings in the future, you can go to hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. We do have a free membership version that you can get that does include the podcast recording, so you can get on here as well. But for today, we're going to do one giveaway for somebody who's in here with me live, and it's going to be 1 grade level of the core language program, which is our 16-week oral language intervention. So you guys will get, whoever wins will get 1 grade level for free. All right, so we're going to do a random generator, 1 to 3. Let's go. All right, it is a number 1. So that is Anissa. Welcome, Anissa. You get the giveaway for 1 grade level of the core language program. Anissa, I'm going to write your name down, and then you can, we'll email you after the podcast and get you all set up for that. So congratulations, Anissa. And like I said, if you guys want to participate in those giveaways in the future, hop on over into the hub at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com, and you'll be able to participate in those. Hey guys, welcome. We got a bunch of people popping in. All right, awesome. Okay, the other announcement that I want to tell you before we jump into sensory and movement is a new tool that I just released inside the hub. And if you are in here with me live, you probably are here because you got that email saying that it's there. So hopefully some of you got to try it out. But I just created a new tool and put it inside the hub that is a social scenario generator. And so it is AI powered, and all you have to do is enter what social skill you're working on, the age of the child or the individual, and then the setting of the scenario if you want, so like school or home. And then it will generate for you a quick little social scenario with a question: what should you do to navigate this social situation? And then some possible suggestions of things you could say or do in that scenario. And every time you hit submit, it comes up with a new one. And so it's an infinite material generator. And I'm super excited. It's still in testing. So if you get in there and it's kind of wonky, let me know, because we are still developing it and still working on it to make sure it does the things that we want it to do. But that is now available inside the hub for our full paid membership. So if you have that full membership, you can pop in there and try that out, and then let us know so that we can figure out how to tweak it and make it great. Because once we get this one going, I have so many other ideas of like word list generators, passage generators, narrative generators, all these things, image generators, all these things where you can just have a quick thing that you can use in therapy to practice a very specific skill. And then you can even customize it to the interests of the client. So let's say you have a client who really loves Minecraft but needs to work on reading comprehension. Well, you could generate a 2nd grade reading level passage about Minecraft and then have 4 comprehension questions that go along with it. So I'm working on all of those right now, but we're starting with the social scenario generator. So if you guys are in the hub, pop over there and let me know what you think of that. and then continue to hang with me as we get the rest of these rolled out because they're going to be really, really cool. But today I want to talk to you about sensory and movement activities and how we can use that to enhance participation and improve behavior during our therapy sessions. Although this is also very helpful information for use in the classroom or at home or anywhere else, because turns out these little ones that we are working with are little balls of energy, and they need to move, and they need sensory experiences. And some of them are incredibly dysregulated, so they need even more. So we are going to talk today about some strategies that you can use to help with that. So as you know, I like to start with a story. So my story this week starts with a teacher at a school I was working with coming up to me and saying, "Have you gotten Tyson to do anything for you this week?" And it really caught me off guard because I had to think back and go, Tyson, because nothing really stood out to me. You know those ones where you go, oh yeah, Tyson, right? Tyson wasn't standing out. And I was like, okay, think back to my sessions. And as I'm trying to think up what happened with Tyson, she continued in her very frustrated voice. And I understand because I have also been at that point too. And she said, he hasn't done anything for any of his teachers or specialists all week. He's been referred to the office so many times for behavior. He refuses. We just don't know what to do. So I'm documenting, how bad it's been. So, okay, how bad was it for you? And I had to go, well, honestly, not that bad at all. He came out of the room. Yes, he came out of the room with a chip on his shoulder and didn't want to do his work. So I just took him straight on down to the mini trampoline, which was in a separate room down the hall. That I had found in a side room. Somebody had a little mini tramp. And within 2 minutes, he was laughing. We'd made up this game out of saying as many speech words as possible while he was jumping on the trampoline. And he did great. And he is making progress on his goals. And that, my friends, that is the magic of movement and sensory activities. I was able to take a kid who I didn't even know was having a rough week. I didn't even know that he had refused to do anything in school all week long. And within just a few minutes, we turned it around and we got him back up and going, okay? So I'm going to talk about some strategies you can use in therapy, in the classroom, at home, anywhere that you need to use movement and sensory to tap into these kids who are not wanting to do the work and who are all maxed out and probably dysregulated as well. Okay. So let's talk about how to tell if a child is sensory seeking. So many of our clients they just seem off. They're dysregulated. And that's often because their little bodies just aren't getting the input they need. There's something that they need that they're either not getting at all or not getting enough of, or their sensory system is interpreting it differently. So maybe they're getting it, but it's just not feeling it. They're not feeling it themselves. Their brain isn't processing it correctly. So when we see children doing things with their bodies that are outside of our expected behaviors, that's in air quotes if you're listening to the podcast, outside of those expected behaviors, then that is our first clue that something is off, that they need something different. And if we can put on our little detective hats and we can start to not see this as a challenge, not see this as a frustration of, he's just doing this to get on my nerves, because sometimes it feels that way. But if we can look at that and observe it and pay attention and be curious, cultivate a mindset of curiosity, then usually we can figure out what it is that their body needs and find ways to give it to them. Now, the flip side of that is that sometimes we have children who are sensory avoiding. And just like these students who are seeking extra sensory input, they're actually trying to avoid a sensory input. So they may be doing things with their body that are off, but because they're trying to avoid something or get away from something that feels not good in their body. So maybe they're covering their ears or covering their eyes or closing their eyes. Maybe they spit out a certain food or refuse to even put it near their mouth. Maybe they pull away from touch or have trouble wearing certain types of clothing. That is a constant battle in my house every morning. And it is so frustrating, but it's not his fault. It is a sensory thing. The pants really do feel weird to my son. And, they didn't feel weird yesterday, but this exact same pair of pants feels weird today. So it's a thing. And so those are some of the kids that we can see are sensory avoiding, meaning that they're trying to get away from certain sensory input. Okay? So I'm going to give you a quick crash course in all the different sensory input systems. And then we're going to talk about a few ideas for how to incorporate movement and sensory into our sessions so that we can get that better participation and behavior. But it's really important to understand the different sensory systems, because then the more you start to see this and the more you observe these students, the more you start to go, I see, this is a vestibular seeking child. He needs vestibular input. How can I modify what I'm doing today? How can I come up with an activity that's going to give him more of that? Or maybe this is a vestibular avoider and he needs to have his feet on the ground. If his feet are not on the ground, he is out of balance and he does not like it. How can I get his feet on the ground, right? Okay, so different sensory systems. The first one is visual. So a child who is seeking visual input might enjoy staring at things. Maybe they like things that spin or flash or sparkle. They may watch things out of the corner of their eye because it looks different in their periphery. For some kids, that's a sensory that they need. Or they may be closing their eyes altogether if they're avoiding that visual input. Maybe certain visual things throw them off. Auditory is our next system. This is our hearing. So our auditory seekers may enjoy making certain noises. This is my children as well. Oh, so many noises in my house constantly. They may be drawn towards certain sources of sound, or maybe they're enjoying making those sources of sound. Or you might have your avoiders, and that one's more obvious because they're usually covering their ears, or sometimes they make a louder sound to cover up the sound they don't like. So they may be screaming, and that is how they are avoiding that auditory input because they're just blocking it out entirely. So that's one. Smell and taste are two different sensory input systems, but I kind of lump them together because they're very similar. So our seekers may be smelling or tasting things that you wouldn't expect. Maybe they're putting everything in their mouth, or they're sniffing everything. Or we might have our avoiders who may refuse to eat certain things. They may be gagging uncontrollably, even when you're not sure what the stimulus is. Could be that they got a waft of a scent that they can't handle. All right. Next is touch. So those seeking a touch input might enjoy rubbing or feeling different textures or fabrics. They might play with your hair or your clothing or their own. They may just need something in their hands, like a fidget toy. The avoiders may refuse certain touches, whether from other people or objects like their clothing, their seatbelt, their chair, whatever it is, something doesn't feel right when it touches them. Okay, that's touch. Then we have our vestibular system. So our vestibular system is the one that helps us regulate our balance and movement. So children who are seeking this input may love jumping, spinning, swinging, crashing, falling down, going upside down. My children hang from this squat rack that's right behind me upside down constantly. Like half the time I walk in the room, they're upside down on that in some capacity. It's great. They crave vestibular movements, right? Alternatively, a child who is avoiding those vestibular sensory inputs may become very agitated when they're not firmly on solid ground. Have you ever had a student that you've put on a swing and they lose it? They cannot be on a swing because there is no grounding for them. And that feeling of movement and balance is very unsettling and it's very upsetting, okay? Maybe if they don't like being in a car, that movement, you're not touching the ground. You are being moved in different planes. That can be very unsettling for a child who is avoiding vestibular input, or even just standing on something high, going up a high staircase. Those might be triggers for them, okay? So that's vestibular. Now there's another one called proprioception, which is kind of similar, but a little bit different. This is the system that tells our body where we are in space. So it tells me that my hands are up in the air, my arms are out to the side, my feet are down below me. That is a system that we all take for granted because we just know where our body is in space. We might know that our legs are curled up underneath us, right? But if a child has low awareness of their body or a low proprioceptive input, they may feel better when they can feel some pressure against their body so that they know where their body ends and the rest of the world begins, right? They're not getting that input that they need. So these are our bumpers and our crashers. If you've ever had a child that you're walking with down a hallway and they are like bumping back and forth from hallway to like from wall to wall, or maybe just dragging their body along the wall, they may be lacking some sort of proprioceptive input. And having that feeling of, oh, there's the wall, now I know where my body ends, is very grounding for them. It makes them feel more comfortable. It's incredibly annoying for us, right? Because we're like, you're knocking stuff off the wall. Oh, don't crash into other people. That kid doesn't like touch, right? But this is something that their body craves. Or maybe it is that they love deep pressure, like hugs and squeezes and tight clothing or compression clothing even. They may sleep nestled in between a billion stuffed animals and toys on their beds. If you have a child who, like, their bed is always so messy and you're like, man, don't you want to get some of this stuff off there? No, it's because they're nestling down into it in sleep so that they're being squeezed all night long and they love it. It's great. Our avoiders then will react negatively to touch and pressure. So if anything is too tight, then they don't like that. They need that space. All right? So those are some sensory systems, and I want you don't have to be an expert, but I want you to just be thinking about these systems as you're watching a child. And instead of getting frustrated, look at that child's behavior and say, I wonder what they need. What are they seeking right now? Because that's a weird thing that I've never experienced in my life. For example, my son what was he doing? He has a lofted bed with a slide. And he was hanging down, upside down from the slide, rubbing his forehead against the slide. And I was just like watching this and I was like, I have no idea what's happening right now. And I was like, you okay there, bud? And he's like, yeah, it feels so good. So I actually talked to his occupational therapist about it the next time we saw her. And she said, oh, I know what that is. She goes, I do that too. She said, I really just love pressure against my forehead, against the front of my head. And she said, sometimes I have my boyfriend just squeeze my head from front to back. And she's like, I just love it. And so like during the session, I was like, come here, bud. And I squeezed his head from front to back, just like she showed me. And he like melted. He was like, oh, that feels so good. Which is funny because I don't like people touching my head. So I have the opposite problem. And so it was hard for me to connect what the behavior was indicating that he needed sensory wise. But now he knows that's what he needs. And he'll go, Mom, will you squeeze my head? We probably look so weird when I do it in public, but it's what he needs. And I don't care. I don't care what people think of us. So anyway, that is what I want you to start to do, is start to internalize, okay, these are the different types of systems. And when you see a child doing some of these behaviors, think about how you could help them get that need met so that their body is more regulated, so that they are in a place to learn. Because if a child feels yucky in their body, they're not ready to learn. They're going to be focused on those sensations or that craving that they have, and they're not going to be able to sit down and work with you, and they're not going to be able to listen to what you're saying, and they're not going to focus on the practice, okay? So let's see. How to incorporate the sensory movement into therapy. So if we can tell what type of input the child needs, we can provide that at the beginning of our session or throughout the session. We can do movement breaks, or we can just, like my friend Tyson, I did change his name, by the way. We can just jump on the trampoline and say our words while we're jumping. Is that what you need? Man, you can jump for 30 minutes straight, and I will just keep working on your words, because you know what? That was an activity I didn't have to prep. I didn't have to cut anything out or laminate anything. You're just jumping, and you're getting exactly what you need, and I'm getting what I need. It's great. So we can do that. We can use those movements, those sensory activities to help them stay engaged with our learning. And then even if you're not sure what they need, we can still try different activities to see which ones help. Some children are going to be very overstimulated by certain activities, whereas the same activity might be very calming to another child. So a lot of it is trial and error, and don't feel bad if you get it wrong, because you're going to. You're going to say, this spinning activity is so calming for many of my children. I will try it with this child. And then he starts screaming, and you go, wow, you were not one of the kids who wanted that. Okay, great. It's okay. You're going to figure it out. But there are some activities that work with a lot of kids that I'm going to share with you here. So I'm going to give you 3 ideas, I think. Let's see. 4, 5. Oh my gosh, I got 5 activities for you. I planned this a week ago and I had already forgotten. Okay, here we go. So the first one is heavy work. And this is just an activity that requires the child to use their muscles, and it helps them focus. And it is usually good for sensory seekers because they are needing more input. And so you want to come up with jobs that the child can do that require strength and that help them feel like they're helping, because our students usually do better if they feel like we're giving them a role as opposed to giving them busy work, right? So things like carrying, pushing, stacking, lifting. Think of things like that, jobs you could give them that will cause them to use their muscles. Okay, so here's some ideas. Carrying your therapy materials, something heavy, to the speech room. You go to get them and you're like, oh, got this big crate. We got to take this to speech. Can you carry it down for me? And they carry it for you or push it for you. We could give them a box or a laundry basket or something like that, put some heavy stuff inside and have them push it to the office while you're practicing your speech skills. So just, oh man, we're losing this kiddo. Hey, I got all these books I've got to take to the office. Could you help me? Oh, we're still going to have to work on our speech words, but you could push while we work, right? Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do that. All right, let's think of P words while we're pushing this down the hall. And they're just pushing something heavy, and you take it down to the office, and you just tell the office ahead of time, hey, I'm going to be bringing some books down. Just ignore those. I'll bring them back later. Maybe your next student goes down and gets them, pushes them back. All the while they think they're helping, and you're getting your speech work in, okay? Taking down and stacking chairs, that's a great one to do. So you can have, if you have longer sessions, not just like 5-minute, but if you're doing like a 30-minute session, the first part of this every session could be taking chairs out. The last part could be stacking them, and that could be where you're taking a few moments to write your data. And then the next group comes in and unstacks and stacks, and that's moving their muscles. Rearranging furniture. Hey, I got to move this table from here to there. Can you help push it? You can push it back and forth all day. Wiping down the tables or dry erase boards. That can be a really good heavy work activity. Or using a big 3-hole punch to punch paper. Hey, I need these papers punched. Let's punch this while we're working on our words. Or sharpening pencils if you've got the big grindy kind. That would be good too. Okay, so that's activity number 1 is heavy work. Number 2 then is playground or gym if you don't have access to an outside space. But I love doing therapy on the playground. I should probably make a whole podcast episode just about that. But I like to just allow the students to do free play as long as they agree to work with me while we're doing it. So I'll follow them around the playground and find ways to work their speech into the play. So, you're going to go down the slide? Cool. You have to say your word every time you step up a step, and then we're going to hold out the sound all the way down the slide. And then we're just going to keep doing that over and over again, right? Or we can do freeze. So you can do like speech tag if you want to actually make it like a freeze tag game. Or you can just say, okay, when I get to you, you have to stop and freeze and do your words or practice your skill or whatever it is, answer my question. And then I'll say, go. And then you go, and I go to the next kid. So if you've got a group of like 3 kids and you're all on the playground together, I like to do this when there's no one else on the playground. So it's a little easier. But okay, you, and I drill. And then I come to the next one, drill while this one's playing. And then the next one, drill. And so I'm moving around to each kid while they're getting to play and move their bodies. Also, anything that you can do with drawing sidewalk chalk on the sidewalk or on the play equipment. Hey, go touch he, go touch she. I'm going to tell you a sentence, or I'm going to ask you a question. You pick the right answer. Anything like that just to get them moving their bodies is great. Okay, so that was heavy work and playground. Activity 3 then is fine motor or sensory play. And I'm talking about slime or putty or Play-Doh or a bin full of dried rice and beans. Now, I am not saying that you should prepare a special sensory tub for each and every session or a new one each week. You can just have these things available, and when you have a kid who's real fidgety, you can say, hey, let's get out the Play-Doh today, and you can have them do Play-Doh while you're practicing your skills. So many things that kids can stick their hands into, and it will totally light up a different part of their brain, and that's great because the more parts of the brain we activate, during our practice, the better they're retaining those skills. All right, number 4 then is alternative seating. So this is finding different ways for kids to sit or stand to make their drill and practice sessions more appealing. So wiggle seats, it's like a little cushion that wiggles when you sit on it. My rule for any alternative seating is we can jiggle like Jell-O, but we can't fall off the plate. If they fall off the plate, then they lose their special seating. Okay, that's my rule, and I stick to it. So wiggle seats, wobble stools are a very uneven stool that wobbles back and forth. A balance board that they can stand on. Oh, we have one, but it's not in here. But yeah, they can stand on that and they can wobble, balance back and forth. It's like a rocking boat that they stand on. An exercise ball, either to sit on or lay on their belly or lay on their back. There's lots you can do with exercise balls. A beanbag chair or something that kind of squeezes them for those kids that need that deep pressure. A swing or a hammock can be really fun too. Or even just hanging. So if you're in a gym, okay, you're going to hang and say your word as many times as you can before you let go. That's a fun one, and it works on their grip strength as well. Okay, last activity. I try to keep these podcasts to a half an hour, and I'm pushing it today. So we're going to get through the last one. The last one is 2-person movement activities. And this is the one that I lean heavily on when I have little ones or big ones who are maybe non-speaking, very severe disabilities where they're really just working on functional communication and they're not able to do any sort of drill and practice with me. I just want to tap into their world. And so if I can figure out what type of an input that child needs, then I can find ways to give them more of that input in a way that they need my help to do. Okay, so this is the key. If they like swinging, then I push them on the swing to get them higher. That is a sensory that's going to feel really good to them, but they can't do it on their own unless they're good at pumping their legs, which these kids usually aren't. Or if they like bouncing, I'll sit on an exercise ball with them on my lap, nice and secure. Make sure you check with your PTs if you have a student with mobility needs so that you make sure you're holding them securely. But then bouncing on the exercise ball, because I'm a lot heavier than them, I can really dig into that bouncy ball and get a nice bounce that gives them that input in a more exciting way than they can do on their own. Or let's say they like spinning. Okay, I'll put them in an office chair and spin them carefully around so that they get more of that input. Once they know that you can give them what they need, they're going to be more willing to communicate to you to get it or to work on a skill to get more of that, right? So it can go either way. You can just use that as the communication tool. Okay, we're just going to say again with our sign language, and we're just going to, that every time you say again, I go again. Or you can say, okay, we got to practice our word 5 times and then we can bounce, right? So we can use it either way. Okay, so those are my 5 ideas. We've got heavy work, we've got playground or gym, fine motor or sensory play, alternative seating, and then 2-person movement activities is what I call that last one. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of how you can kind of get into that. We do have several free resources on sensory and movement inside the hub. So if you go to hub.speechandlanguagekids.com, the resources that we have in our free membership level there's a reinforcer idea cheat sheet. It's got ideas for sensory activities that you can use as a reinforcement during your sessions. We also have a behavior analysis tracking sheet, a stemming analysis worksheet. So if they're doing some stemming behaviors, you can look at those and see if you can figure out what type of input they're trying to get and see if you can use that to find these activities that are going to give them what they need. My caveat there is make sure you're working with your occupational therapist or your other sensory specialists. But that can be a really great way to kind of analyze what they're already doing and figure out your way in, so to speak. And then we also have a page that's ideas for making drill and practice more fun, which has a lot of these activities as well. So head on over to hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. You can pop in there, grab that free membership, and then if you want to upgrade to the full paid membership, you can check out those infinite therapy material generators that I'm working on. If you missed that at the beginning, I was talking about that right when we started. We have a social scenario generator where you can populate a new social scenario every time you push submit based on the criteria you put in. But I'm working on some other ones too, so go check those out as well. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. I went a little long, but I got real close, so we're going to count it. I hope to see you guys next week on the podcast. I actually don't know what we're talking about next week yet, but it's going to be amazing, and we'll see you all there. Thank you guys so much. Bye.